Welcome to This Explainer. Today, we're diving straight into a fascinating journey through the hidden glitches of our own minds. Seriously, we're going to explore an invisible force, this subtle little illusion that dictates so much of what we do, who we trust, and even how we spend our hard-earned money, usually without us even realizing it. It's called the halo effect. So, let me ask you a question. Are you an objective judge of character? Well, most of us would instantly say, of course I am. I'm completely rational. We absolutely love to think that we evaluate people based on hard evidence, right? Looking at their actual skills and genuine personality traits rather than just superficial appearances. But are we really that objective? To answer that, consider this little mystery. Identical essays, identical words, completely different grades. Why? This actually perfectly illustrates a famous academic experiment that totally shattered the idea of human objectivity. Teachers were given the exact same essays to grade. The handwriting was identical. The ideas were the same. The punctuation was exactly the same. Yet the scores came back wildly different. To understand how that's mathematically possible, we have to uncover what happens to all of us every single day, right under our noses. Section 1, the illusion revealed. It's all because of the halo effect. This is a cognitive bias where a single positive or negative trait disproportionately influences our overall judgment of a person, a brand, or a thing. Basically, when we notice one really outstanding quality, say someone is exceptionally attractive, highly articulate, or just radiating confidence, our brain takes a lazy shortcut. It unconsciously assumes that literally everything else about them must be equally outstanding. It's like a single ray of radiant light just colors the entire portrait. What's really wild is just how long science has known about this glitch. It starts way back in 1920 when a psychologist named Edward Thorndike noticed a striking pattern in military officer evaluations. If a soldier was tall and physically fit, officers automatically rated them higher on completely unrelated attributes, things like intelligence, loyalty, and reliability. Then, fast forward to 1972, the famous Dion photo study proved that ordinary people could look at photographs of attractive strangers and just automatically assume they were happier, more successful, better spouses, and even better parents. And today, well, it's recognized as one of the most pervasive, powerful biases in all of human psychology. Which brings us right back to our essay mystery. Researchers gave teachers identical essays, but they attached a photograph to the file. They told half the teachers the author was attractive, and the other half the author was unattractive. And you guessed it, the teachers grading the attractive author's work gave significantly higher grades. The exact same words were suddenly judged as more intelligent, more coherent, and more convincing, simply because the perceived author had a pretty face. The teachers couldn't help it. The halo of beauty simply illuminated everything it touched. Section 2. The real-world stakes. Now, this isn't just some quirky academic anomaly confined to classrooms and laboratories. Let's step out into the real world and see how this bias directly impacts your daily life, your career, and yes, your wallet. Consider this striking number, 10 to 15%. Economist Daniel Hammermish conducted a landmark study and found that attractive workers earn roughly 10 to 15% more over a lifetime than their less attractive peers. And here is the absolute kicker. That remains true even when you control for education, experience, and actual job performance. The halo effect literally pays out in cold, hard cash. And that perfectly illustrates how deeply it infects our society across the board. In the workplace, hiring managers unconsciously favor candidates who are tall or well-spoken, assuming they'll make great leaders regardless of their actual resume. In the courtroom, it gets much darker. Research on real cases shows attractive defendants receive lighter sentences and are actually more likely to be acquitted for the exact same crimes. Justice might be blind, but the halo effect makes sure jurors are not. And in relationships, we naively assume that because someone is charming or funny, they must also be honest and dependable, completely blinding us to serious red flags until it's just too late. But it doesn't stop at people, either. Consider this. Apple's reputation for design makes consumers assume their products are more reliable. Billion-dollar brands intentionally cultivate a cool halo. Because you love the sleek design of a smartphone, your brain unconsciously assumes the product is also highly secure and incredibly innovative, even when objective tests might show competitors matching them on those exact specs. A single positive association just becomes a blanket endorsement. Section 3, the dark mirror, also known as the horns effect. Because what goes up must come down. We really need to look at the devastating negative counterpart to this illusion, the fact that one negative impression casts a shadow over everything else. This is the horns effect. If an employee makes one highly visible mistake, has a stutter, or just possesses an unconventional appearance, our brains cruelly assume they are incompetent across the board. They're watched more closely and criticized way more harshly. The shadow of one single difference darkens the entire picture. Let's break this cruel feedback loop down side by side. On one side, we have the halo effect. A positive trait leads to assumed excellence, which gets you more opportunities, which leads to better performance. The halo strengthens. But look at the other side, the horns effect. A single negative trait leads to assumed inadequacy, and because of that, you're given fewer opportunities, which inevitably results in worse performance. The shadow deepens, creating this trap that is nearly impossible to escape. Ultimately, this leads to a really tragic outcome known as the Gollum effect. Lower expectations force worse performance. When the horns effect causes people to lower their expectations of you, it triggers the Gollum effect, trapping people in an exhausting, completely unfair cycle where they have to work twice as hard just to prove their baseline worth, while others cruise by effortlessly on the momentum of their halos. I know that sounds a bit bleak, but don't worry. Now that we can see the invisible illusion, we can actively fight it. Which brings us to Section 4, Seeing Through the Illusion. Because this bias is deeply wired into human cognition, we can't just delete it from our brains like a bad app, but we absolutely can outsmart it. We can use 3 practical, science-backed techniques to overcome both the halo and horns effects in your everyday decision-making. Let's look at them one by one. First up, technique number 1, separate traits deliberately. Strip away the halo and use rubrics. Remember, the brain loves lazy shortcuts. To combat this, we have to mentally strip away the halo. If you're deeply impressed by a candidate's confidence during an interview, force yourself to pause and ask, okay, yes, but are they actually competent? This is exactly why using written rubrics and evaluation checklists for hiring, dating, or investing is absolutely critical. If you write the criteria down before the evaluation begins, the halo has significantly less room to distort your perception. Moving on to technique number 2, seek disconfirming evidence to fight confirmation bias. The halo effect thrives on confirmation bias. Once we like someone, we literally only notice the good. So you need to actively play detective against your own mind. If you meet someone incredibly charismatic, deliberately look for flaws, maybe a lack of follow-through or impatience. And if you have a quiet, unassuming colleague trapped under the horns effect, deliberately look for their hidden depths, their reliability, or their expertise. You aren't being cynical, you're just demanding the whole, fair truth. And finally, technique number 3, build your own halo intentionally. Invest in an authentic first impression. We can actually reframe this bias as a powerful, positive tool. Since you know the world is going to judge you based on a first impression, invest deeply in making it a great one. Present yourself with clarity, care, and confidence. Craft a thoughtful introduction or deliver a highly polished first piece of work. You aren't tricking anyone. You're simply ensuring that the halo that naturally forms around you is a fair and accurate reflection of your real strengths. Let your very best trait shine first, and then make sure the rest of you lives up to it. As we wrap up this explainer, I want to leave you with this final provocative question. Who did you judge today based on a single shadow? Or, on the flip side, who did you give a free pass to just because they were illuminated by a bright halo? Keep your eyes open, deliberately challenge your own assumptions, and you can begin to master these invisible forces in your own mind. Thanks for joining me to explore this fascinating topic, and as always, keep learning.